Hi students, my name is Pandika. Welcome back to the next video of this chapter. In this video, we'll cover some topics, some questions and quick revision of this chapter. So let's get started. So the very first topic is Adivasi's demands and the 1989 Act. Okay, so as we've all read some of the features of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe 1989 Act, which makes this particular act very, very important, right? Let's recall the features of these acts. Now, one of the features, we read actually three features, if you guys remember. One of the features was that the government divided the modes of humiliation, right? Modes of humiliation. Now, the second thing that the government did, the second feature of this act was that, there were some actions which were listed according to which if anybody tries to go against these actions or anybody tries to force the Adivasis or the Dalits to do these particular actions, that person will be punished for the same. And the very third was for the STs and SCs and Dalit women, that anybody in case tries to sexually assault or humiliate the SCs, STs or Dalit women, that person will be punished for the same. So these were the features that we read and understood in the previous slide, which are covered under the Scheduled Tribes and Scheduled Caste Act 1989. But there is one more feature which makes it very, very important, and which is that feature. So the feature is here. Basically, one of the another very important feature of this act is that this act defend the right of Adivasis to occupy their land in case anybody tries to forcibly take that from them. So basically, one of the very most important feature of this act also includes that nobody other than the tribal people cannot forcibly try to occupy the lands that have been allotted to the Dalit people. Let me explain you this in a very simple language, that no other non-tribal people cannot forcibly take the land which have been allotted to the Dalits, right? Nobody can forcefully take the land of the Dalits. Nobody can force the Dalits to give their land to them, or nobody can forcefully occupy the lands of the Dalits which have been allotted to them by the government, or it has been allotted to them by themselves, but it is their land. In case it is a land of Dalit, nobody can occupy them. No non-tribal person can occupy the lands of Dalit. It is not allowed under this particular act. No non-tribal person can occupy the lands of Dalit under this act. And in case anybody tries to forcibly occupy the lands of the tribal people, that person will be punished under this particular act. And now you might wonder that in the previous chapter we read that due to the forest laws, the Adivasis were being forced to leave their traditional forest lands and migrate to the cities in place for in the scope of work in for finding work and so on and so forth, because due to the implementation of forest laws in the country, tribal people were actually forcibly evicted from their own traditional forest lands, because the laws was that new industries were to be set up in the tribal lands, and so the people who used to live in those tribal lands were asked to go from their own tribal land. So these laws were being implemented in the country. Now you might wonder that the constitution itself, the government itself is violating this law by implementing such forest laws wherein industries were to be set up in these tribal lands, and they were being asked to evict their own tribal lands. Now the same topic, the same concern was being raised by an Adivasi activist, which is C.K. Janu. So now let's understand what C.K. Janu said. C.K. Janu is basically an Adivasi activist, and she said the same thing that might have occurred to your mind, that now you're telling us that there is a particular law which says that nobody can occupy the lands of Dalit. And in the previous chapter, we learned how the new forest laws were implemented and the tribal people were evicted from their own lands. Now, how does this justify the law? Now, isn't it against the law? Yes, it is definitely against the law, and the same concern was risen by this person who is an Adivasi activist known as C.K. Janu. She said that even though the government has implemented a law which says that nobody can occupy the lands of Dalit, but still, the constitution itself is breaking the law. The constitution is violating the law themselves. They are themselves implementing such laws wherein industries and agricultural lands are to be set up in their lands for which they have been evicted from their own traditional forest lands. How does this justify their law? They themselves are violating. And so, in response to the violation done by the constitution, CK Janu says that there should be some compensation that should be given to the Adivasis, because they are being the ones who are being most affected by the forest loss, because they are living in the forest since so many years. Their livelihood is in the forest. They know everything about the forest, and it will be so difficult for them to immediately migrate to a particular new place and find work, right? It will majorly affect their life, and so it is very, very wrong. So in case that constitution has implemented such forest laws, in case that forest people, the tribal people, are needed to leave that place, in this case the government should provide some compensation to these people. What compensation? It should actually provide a proper rehabilitation place to these people. It should give them proper work to do, so that they does not face any problem once they migrate from their tribal lands. Even though they have to migrate from their tribal lands because of the new laws that have been implemented in the country, still, if the government tries to give them compensation in terms of a proper work to do after they have been migrated and proper place to live, they wouldn't face so many problems that they are facing, or that they faced during the laws or during the eviction of them from their own lands. So this is what CK Janu said. CK Janu said that you yourself is violating the laws, and so this is very wrong. So, you should give some compensation to Adivasis, and the compensation should be in terms of a proper rehabilitation, that is a proper place to live and proper work to do, so that they does not face so many problems once they migrate from their own lands. All right, moving forward. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the chapter, but not the end of the video. So here's a conclusion of the topic that we have read. So the latest topic that we read was the Adivasi's demand and the 1989 Act, under which we actually understood that even though law was implemented, but violated by the constitution itself. What does this justify? This justifies that just not making a law and putting on a paper on the constitution does not will make the government reach the target, or does not will do social justice to the minority communities. Not just making a law for the minority communities will help them out. You will have to take efforts in order to help these communities, in order to help Adivasis, Dalits, right? Not just making a law and writing it on a piece of paper or the constitution will help these people. You will have to make certain constant efforts in order to help these people. You will have to translate these laws into actions in order to help these minority communities in real life, right? And so we understood this through an example where we read that even though the law was being implemented, but still the same problem was being faced by the Adivasis, that even though there was a law wherein it was prohibited to possess the lands of Dalits, but still there were some laws implemented by the government wherein the people were evicted. The tribal people were evicted from their lands because the industries were to be set up there. So this is against the law, and the law was being violated by the constitution themselves. And thus it is quite evident that law is just not writing something on the constitution for the sake of just making the law. You will have to implement that particular law if you want to help the people, right? Okay, so this is the conclusion of the entire chapter, wherein, not the chapter, but the topic that we have latestly read, that is the Adivasi's demand in the 1989 Act. Now we'll move on to some questions. The very first question says that list two fundamental rights in the Constitution that Dalits can draw upon to insist that they be treated with dignity and as equals. Okay. So since we have been reading the chapter, we are now quite clear that the right to equality is being violated. Definitely it is being violated. And right to exploitation. Right to equality, we read how it is violated in the example of Ratnam. How he was being forcibly asked to wash the feet of the people of majority community, which directly indicates that it is a moral humiliation that was done to him. And any kind of moral humiliation depicts that equal rights are not given to everyone, right? There is a discrimination on the basis of region, religion, and caste. He was being forcibly asked to wash his feet just because he belongs to Dalit community, which actually evidently speaks loud that he was being asked to forcibly wash his feet just because he belongs to the Dalit community, which says that there is a proper discrimination on the basis of his caste and religion. So here the right to equality is being violated since he was not given equal rights, since he was forcibly asked to wash his feet just because he belonged to a Dalit family, and that makes a proper discrimination on the basis of caste, which eventually violates the right to equality for Ratna. And the second incident that we examined was in the case of manual scavenging. Manual scavenging. Some people are being forcibly asked to become manual scavengers just because they belong to a particular society or a particular group of people. You know, maybe they don't have enough money and that is why they are being asked to become manual scavengers just because they are a little less powerful than the society. That is why they are asked to become manual scavengers, and so they have been asked to become manual scavengers and clean the human excreta and the animal excreta to put themselves into the chamber and get exposed to so many infections. They are being asked to do so because they belong to a particular group, or they belong to a particular society which is a little less powerful, which might be a little, which might be a little less powerful or less in number. That is why they are being forced to do so, and which actually evidently depicts that there is a right to inequality, there is a violation of right to equality. They are being discriminated on the basis of their caste. Also, there is a right to exploitation. Right to exploitation has been violated here, as in they are being exploited by asking to become manual scavengers, which is actually a work which is not supposed to be done by humans. It is supposed to be done by machines, and they are being forced to do manual scavenging, which actually exposes them to so many numerous problems, right? And sometimes death too. Yes, sometimes death too. So here it is a evident violation of right to exploitation, and an evident violation of right to equality. Moving on, why do Adivasis activists, including C.K. Janu, believe that Adivasis can also use this 1989 Act to fight against dispossession? Is there anything specific in the provision of the Act that allows her to believe this? Yes, definitely. As we have saw in the previous chapter, that tribal people, were being evicted due to implementation of okay, due to the implementation of forest laws, which made them which made them evict, right? When the tribal people were asked to evict their own forest lands due to the implementation of the forest laws implemented by the government itself, the people could actually uh, file the case against this particular law, because this law has one of the features which says that nobody can possess or occupy the lands of the forest people forcibly. Okay, non-tribal people are not allowed to occupy the lands of the Dalits or the Adivasis, all right? And so when Adivasis were being forced to evict their tribal lands, Adivasis had the right to file the case against this particular law, that this particular law of theirs is being violated by the government itself, right? So they could have filed a case, or they could have filed a petition to the Supreme Court that this law has been violated by the government itself, because they are being asked to evict their places without giving any compensation. First, the law has evicted. First, the law has been violated, that their lands have been forcibly occupied. Second, that they haven't been given any compensation for the same. So they could have filed a petition in the Supreme Court for the same, saying that their law has been violated, since the Act 1989 includes this feature that nobody can forcibly occupy the lands of Dalits and Adivasis. And we could see, while there was an implementation of forest laws, government itself evicted the tribal people because of industries were to be set up there. And there is a complete violation of this particular law, 1989 Act, wherein it includes that if anybody tries to occupy the lands of the Adivasis, that person will be punished for the same. And thus, Adivasis could have taken their stand in the court, saying that this law has been violated because it has been featured in this 1989 Act. Okay. Is there anything specific in the provisions of the Act that allows her to believe in this? Definitely, it is specific. It is highly specific in this particular Act that in case anybody tries to occupy the land of Dalits forcibly or Adivasis, that person will be punished for the same. No non-tribal person is allowed to occupy the land of the Dalits and Adivasis. In case that they try to do so, they will be punished for the same. It is highly mentioned, and it is one of the provisions of this Act, according to which, by taking stand of this particular law, they could have filed a petition in the Supreme Court saying this law has been this law has been violated. So this gives answer to the question that do CK Janu believe that Adivasis can also use this 1989 Act to fight against dispossession? Yes, definitely, because a particular provision has been written in this particular law. Is there anything specific in the provision? Yes, it is specific, highly specific, that it is not allowed. It is not allowed to occupy the lands of Adivasis, and in case somebody tries to, he or she will be punished for the same. It is highly specific in this particular law, and Adivasis could have taken their stand on the basis of this law and would have filed the petition saying that this law of theirs has been violated. Moving forward, reread the story of Ratnam and the provision of 1989 Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe. Now list one reason why you think he uses this law to file a complaint. Let's first recall the features of the SC Act 1989. SC and ST Act 1989 features of. This is features, okay? One of the features is two modes of humiliation were being divided by the government. It was validated by the government, saying there were two modes of humiliation that were being validated: physical and moral. Second point says, second feature of the SC/ST Act was there were some list of actions that were being written in case anybody tries to forcibly make you do this particular act which was listed in this, will be punished. Third was women of Dalit, SC, ST cannot be humiliated, sexually assaulted, and in case anybody tries to do this, that person will be punished for the same. So as we can see in the very first feature, that there were two modes of humiliation that were validated by the government, that was physical and moral. And if you guys remember the example of Ratnam, he was forcibly asked to wash the feet of the people of majority community, which is a true indication of a moral humiliation. He was being morally humiliated. Obviously, he was not being physically hurt, he was not physically beaten, but he was morally humiliated, right? So this was one of the reasons why he could use this law to file the complaint, or why he used this law to file the complaint, because one of the features of SC and SC Act is moral humiliation. If anybody tries to morally humiliate Dalits and Adivasis, that person could be punished for the same. That is written in the features, and he took the stand of the moral humiliation and filed the complaint against this person in the police station, saying that he has been morally humiliated in the village. He has been forcibly asked to wash the feet of the people of the majority community. It is one of the reasons. There were other reasons also, that he was being, his house was being set on fire. This is also physical, a physical humiliation. He was not being physically hurt, but he was being tried to physically hurt, right? People tried to kill him. That is, people tried to physically hurt him. He wasn't the victim of physical humiliation because he was not yet, burnt, or he was not hurt physically as of yet, but he was tried to be physically hurt. So anything could have happened, but as of yet he was not being physically hurt, but people tried to physically hurt him, right? But in the story, he was definitely morally humiliated. He was being forcibly asked to wash his feet, just because he was a Dalit, just because he belonged to a lower caste, just because he was a Dalit. He was being forcibly asked to wash their feet. So it is a total indication of moral humiliation. He was being morally humiliated, and just on the basis of this particular feature, he filed a complaint in the police station saying that his law has been violated. Okay. So this brings us to the end of the chapter while the start of the quick revision. So let's just quickly revise the entire chapter. Okay, so the very first Article 17 of the Constitution abolishes untouchability. Article 15 prohibits discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So as we have seen that minority communities have to face a lot of problems, a lot of discrimination. They are excluded from the society, they are being marginalized by the society, and therefore they rose their voice against the government, saying that they also want some laws which will protect them, which will safeguard them from such exclusion and marginalization. And thus, the government took some steps and implemented some laws which will protect or safeguard the minority communities. One of them is Article 17, which says that untouchability is being abolished in the country. In case anybody tries to practice untouchability, that person will be punished for the same. Article 15 says discrimination is prohibited in the country. In case anybody tries to still practice discrimination, the person will be punished for the same. Policies or schemes for the protection of the marginalized group emerge through means like setting up a committee or a survey, etc. All right. So as we have understood that, okay. Okay, so basically center and state governments created some specific schemes. That is, they created reservations for the people who belong to the minority community, that is Dalits and Adivasis. So they created some reservations for those people who belong to scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, and the Dalits and other backward classes. And we understood the entire concept of reservation in the previous slides also. All right. The SC and ST Act 1989 lists the modes of humiliation, prevents forced labor of Dalit, and recognizes assaults against Dalit and tribal women. Now, this point actually explains how or what were the features of the 1989 Act. What were the features of 1989 Act said, which we have recalled many a times now. One of them is the modes of humiliation, physical and mental. Second one was there were some actions which were listed in the features, which says that if anybody tries to violate these actions which have been listed, the person will be punished. And the very third feature was that nobody can sexually assault or humiliate the tribal women or the Dalit women. Moving on. Despite the passing of laws to help Dalit and Adivasis group reclaim their rights, these violations continue in some form or the other. In democratic societies, action in the form of struggle and negotiation is required to ensure the policies and laws are implemented. Yeah. So as we understood that apart from all the features that have been listed in the features of SCs and STs Act 1989, there is one more another feature which makes it very important. That is, no tribal community can actually occupy the land of Dalits forcibly. And this law was being violated by the constitution itself, as we saw in the chapter, wherein there were implementation of forest laws which made them evict, which made the tribal people evict from their forest lands. This is a complete violation of the law by the government itself. And that says that just not writing the law on the piece of paper makes it a law. You will have to actually implement the law by taking a lot many efforts if you actually want to help the people of the minority community, and that will actually take a lot of efforts. Not just merely writing the law on the paper, on the piece of paper, will not help the people. You will have to take a lot of efforts in order to help the people. I hope you understood the chapter. That brings us to the end of the entire chapter. We'll connect in the next video. By then, thank you so much for joining me on Study Room.